This is my 2003 Honda CBR 1100XX, affectionately known as the Honda Blackbird. It is not a very mainstream influencer bike, so you would be forgiven for not recognizing it or its pedigree. While you don't need to know the history behind it for our purposes today, you do need to know that, like most niche motorcycles, it has a cult following. And unfortunately, like most cult followers, they hate it when you change anything our Father in Heaven, Mr. Honda, has given to us. I distinctly remember delinking the brakes, posting about it, and being met with 20 different but similar iterations of Honda knows best. Hey, my name is Michael, and today I'm going to tell you why that's bullshit. And to get this out of the way, I am not at all bashing people for keeping their bikes stock. Being a purist in regards to your own machine is absolutely fine. I am solely referring to people who go out of their way to be negative towards other people who modify their own motorcycle. This video is to deconstruct this baseless narrative pushed onto others, not to insult people who are just out there happily enjoying their stock machine. So why is saying, insert manufacturer here, knows best, wrong? Well, for starters, the goals between a manufacturer and a consumer are entirely different. When Honda made the Blackbird, they wanted to make a fast, in fact the fastest, reliable, emissions compliant, noise compliant, comfortable sport tourer that would check most boxes of most people who were looking for a machine in that category. Flash forward 2 decades later to me buying it, and I wanted it as a more reliable, more comfortable sport bike. Things like the linked brake system are adored by the older generation who uses it as a sport tourer, but to someone practicing low-speed maneuvers and doing track days, it isn't ideal at all. The stock exhaust is perfect for someone who likes chrome, doesn't mind the extra weight, and who values a nice quiet exhaust. To someone like me who wants a little bit more sound and tone, a little bit more reliable power, meaty torque curve, more responsive throttle, and less flashy look, it's the first thing to go. It's not that Honda was right or wrong, they just had to make design choices based on regulations and common preferences to be able to sell it in the first place, and few of those apply to everyone. The people who claim manufacturer knows best are arguing against a point that doesn't exist anywhere. To say something like manufacturer knows best implies that I or anyone else is saying they don't know how to make bikes. I'm not questioning if a brand's engineer knows more than me. I've spoken to quite a few, and I promise you they know way more than me, and I'm very well aware of it. The knowledge of what to do does not mean they have the ability to do it, though. Modification is treated by some like an insult, when in reality it is one of the best compliments a brand can receive. It has nothing to do with me hating this machine and wanting to change everything about it, but since I love 99% of everything on it, and I love this machine so much, I'm willing to spend my money and time to make it fit me better because I am so certain that I'm going to ride it for a long, long time. Modification isn't inherently a critique. The anger towards modification from a purist assumes it is some of ill intent or a form of vandalism, when in reality it can be the opposite. While I've spent a little bit of time on subjectively better mods, I think the biggest counter-argument to this notion of manufacturer did it right the first time are objective mods. For example, those familiar with the Blackbird know it runs hot in traffic. I remember seeing it reach 235 when it was 20 degrees outside. It is common knowledge on the forums that the impeller just doesn't flow enough coolant below 4,000 RPMs. When I got this bike tuned, I had the idle map enriched so that the motor would run cooler when sitting, and it made a night and day difference. This is very common amongst older air-cooled bikes and is one reason we don't have as many large air-cooled bikes anymore. Either fail emissions with a cool running bike, or pass emissions with a bike that overheats. Back to the Bird. As I said, this change in the map fixed this issue for the most part. I also changed the Honda coolant out for water wetter and haven't seen it go anywhere above 221 since. These changes are objectively better than how the bike came stock, and it overcomes a known issue with the bike. I have no doubt that Honda knew how to make their bike run cooler, but as stated before, knowing how and being able to are very, very different. Also, when I got this bike tuned, I was not chasing peak horsepower numbers. The Bird is built around a torquey power plant, and it has its advantages. When getting it tuned, my main goal was to get more power throughout the rev range to increase throttle response, around town cruisability, interstate cruising, and overall speed and acceleration. And it did. I had noticeable gains right off idle, and it improved all of these characteristics notably. Again, Honda could have engineered it like this right out of the box if they were allowed to, but they weren't. Lastly, better brake pads and stainless steel lines. I have a set of Galfer stainless steel lines and EBC double H centered rated pads all around. This provides a tangible and objective benefit to the stopping power of this machine, which was already pretty decent all things considered. Honda knows steel braided lines are better, but they also know people need to be able to afford it if they want to sell any Blackbirds. Lastly, addressing the argument of just get a different bike. I heard this a lot when I was modifying my 250L. I had an exhaust, a flash CCU, weight reduction mods, new plastics, and at a few points I entirely changed the headlight assembly to the point where it was completely unrecognizable for what bike it was. When I posted in the Facebook group about it, I was met with lots of approval and lots of just get a different bike. No. Why would I do that when I can just make this one exactly how I want it? And by the end of my 45,000 mile ownership, it basically was. It looked how I wanted, handled how I wanted, sounded like how I wanted, and most importantly, I made the memories I wanted. I had a bike that started conversations, that people admired, inquired about, and was different than any other 250L, which says a lot because there's still a billion of them on the road today. Some people just don't want the same bike as everyone else, and you can't just satisfy that requirement by buying another blank canvas that has a million identical copies itself. The only objective argument to come from this is money. Why spend $2,000 to modify a $5,000 bike? Well, why did you buy a $5,000 bike? It's fun. That's why we're here. It's different, it's free, and it's fun. It's the same argument as from my video on Gear Police. You have no right to criticize my bad financial decision when you also spent thousands on a toy. The man playing Russian roulette with 3 bullets has no right to call the man with 4 an idiot. At the end of the day, you don't have to like everyone's choices when it comes to their bike, but you do owe it to everybody to not be a prick. I've seen mods that have genuinely made me laugh before that I would never do on my bike in a million years, but it isn't my bike. It isn't my taste, and it isn't my place. Thank you all so much for watching. Rubber side down, and I'll see you in the next one.